Good evening and welcome to Wednesday's Wisdom, practicing the presence. And that's what we're here to do is practice, practice, practice. My name is Judy Chapman and I'm one of the assistant ministers here at the center. And it is my joy to welcome each and every one of you here to this wonderful sacred evening. We're going to start tonight like we start everything. That's with affirmative prayer, which is one of the most powerful spiritual tools that we have at our disposal. So we're going to start with the chant, and our practitioner tonight is Patrick Freeman, and he will come up after the chant and open our service. And then he's going to share a short demonstration of prayer that either, I don't know whether it's his personal one or someone that he has as a client. No names ever, though. So let us chant.
Good evening. I'm Patrick Freeman. I'm a licensed practitioner here at the center, a member of the choir, and I've been involved with religious science since 1986. It took me a long time to become a practitioner. So let's start out with a prayer. So please join with me in consciousness. Your feet are on the floor, your hands are in your lap. I know that God is all there is. God is love. God is abundance. God is peace. God is health. God is all the wonderful things that we wish and want and have in our lives. I know that every bit of me is God, and all the wonderful qualities of God are mine. And I also know that for every person here, every person that is a member of this community has the same things has all the love, all the wonderful qualities of God. I know this to be true, and I thank the universe, and I release this treatment into the law. And please join with me in saying, and so it is. I'll be very brief. I do have um, an organization that's a client that I will remain nameless, but I can tell you this afternoon, they won their 13th of the last 14 games in the National League West. So that's pretty good treatment. So I didn't. So um, personally, I have had my knee replaced in February, and it actually the doctor says I'm doing great for ahead of schedule, but I treat every day that it goes better and better and better and better. It's not without pain, but I'm glad I did it, and I'm very glad I'm here. And so I guess I'm turning this over back to Judy.
Thank you, Patrick. Yes, we have so many different spiritual practices that we can, that are available to us. We have meditation, we have silence, affirmative prayer, journaling. There's just all kinds of things. And I'm going to tell you about one that's called Simplify. And I got this from the Friday morning group at 8 o'clock here in the sanctuary with Joyce and Jean. It's a great group. The simplification of life is one of the steps to inner peace. A persistent simplification will create an inner and outer sense of well-being that places harmony in one's life. The Peace Pilgrim said that. So let it go. Let go of all those things that no longer serve us. How many things are you holding on to that are no longer serving you? How many old beliefs that need to be just looked at and then let go? How many material things are cluttering up your life? Time to let them go. How about resentment and anger, fear and stress? It's time to let them go. They're no longer serving you. So that's just one of many, many different spiritual practices that we teach here at the center. So I'm very excited about tonight. I'm very pleased to tell you a little bit about our guest tonight. He is a fellow of religious science. And I talked to him tonight. He said, I don't know what that means because I've only been in religious science part since 1989. So he said a fellow of religious science is a person who has taken all the ministerial classes. So he is a fellow of religious science, bishop in the Free Church of Antioch, CEO Emeritus of Madonna Ministry International, author of books on spiritual psychology, and an artist. I want to show you a few of his books he's written. Licking Your Wounds, Charlie Sommer, Assisting the Healing Process. The Dynamics of Living Love. The Next Step with Spirit. Extraordinary Events That Happen to Ordinary People. Those are three of the books that our guest has written. And this one, Brothers of the Grape, author is Arnold Michael. And he was given a doctorate by Dr. Ernest Holmes for writing this book. So Charlie has been married 59 years to a very accomplished, beautiful wife. He has 3 sons and 8 grandchildren. Please give a warm welcome to Charlie Sommer.
Thank you. Thank you all for showing up. And Judy, thank you for having the wisdom to invite me here. And Patrick, I knew Patrick has 19 years of Catholic training. And he looked at this tonight and he said, boy, that looks Catholic. And then he asked me about, is this wine or grape juice? I said, it's grape juice. He said, then it must be Lutheran. It's a wonderful opportunity to be here. And I thank Darren McClure back there for handling all the electrical stuff, and Jean Stone and Joyce Daire for making this homemade bread that's a little bit of wheat, a little bit of flour, a little bit of, that's about salt. So it doesn't rise at all. And we're going to use that as part of this ceremony in the celebration of what I'm calling the New Age Sacrament of Empowerment. And this is something that may be new to most of you. It's not new to me. And looking up the word sacrament, the base word of sacrament is sacred. So I'm going to ask each of you to give me an idea of what is sacred to each of you. So if somebody has a microphone, I would like to know what you hold sacred. What's sacred to you?
All of life is sacred to me.
All of life. Anyone else?
The Spirit of God that I perceive is sacred to me.
The Spirit of God and what?
That I perceive, that I feel all around me, through
Feel
me,
all around
as
you.
me.
Okay. Anyone else? There's no wrong answers.
Hope.
Hope. Okay. Anyone else?
Deep human connection.
Main connection?
Human connection.
The what connection?
Human.
Human connection. Thank you. Patrick has something to add.
All creation, all of us, the earth, the universe, everything.
All
Sacred.
creation is sacred. All right. So how do you transfer that into understanding what a sacrament is? So what's a sacrament?
In the Catholic Church, it's a substitution for something that we hold sacred. So a ritual to uh, commemorate the sacredness that we feel in our hearts.
Okay. It's a ritual to commemorate the sacredness within our hearts. Anything else?
Catholics believe that some of the sacraments, for example, the sacrament of Holy Communion, is that the priest actually, the, the bread and the wine are actually changed into the body and blood of Christ. So it's obviously a very sacred, very important event.
And how many other sacraments do they have?
7.
Good answer. Anyone else? All right, so we have an idea of what we consider to be sacred and what sacraments are in our lives. I just returned this week from France, where I toured with a group of friends. There were 14 in total, and we're visiting what was considered sacred sites. Now, I've toured and seen many sacred sites around the world, and they fascinate me. This time, one of the sacred sites was Mount Michel. Has anyone been there? It's a beautiful, beautiful, like church castle fortification out in France, out in the water. And when the tide comes in, it's totally surrounded by water. And monks have lived there for years. It's probably the second most visited monument in France. It's huge. And Saint Michael appeared to a local bishop and told them to build it. And that's what started it many centuries ago. And it's become a beautiful visitation center. Also, we visited the sites of King Arthur and Merlin. And that was fascinating too, because when you're in those woods, it took us a long time, but we discovered what is called Merlin's tomb. And Merlin's tomb is really a rock. But you can see that people consider this rock very sacred because they visit it and they leave things in honor of that sacred spot. And some of us that are more sensitive than others were able to feel the energy coming out of that stone, similar to ley lines you might feel around the world, like in Sedona. They're very powerful. We also visited another sacred spot. Have you heard of the Cathars? The Cathars were quite a group of people that lived in France and had a life of their own. And they had a way of expressing spirituality that was kind of a duality form of spirituality. And but they had a wonderful community and they prospered. But the Pope was threatened by it. And can you imagine a person that calls himself Pope Pius III slaughtering 20,000 of these people because they were a threat to him, because he had a different way of life and he wanted to control, and also the income and money you get and the taxes. And he convinced the King of France to help him. And the last stronghold was high up on a perched, it's like a little castle. And there were a small band of them that they rooted out and killed them there. And there's a monument to that. You can climb up to it. So that spot's very sacred to some people. We went to Chartres Cathedral. That's sacred to some people. And people know that there's a labyrinth within the beautiful church and all of its beautiful stained glass windows. You can only walk the labyrinth once a month because there's chairs in the way. And then we went to another sacred spot where I've been a few times, 3 times or more, and that's called Lourdes in France. How many people know that one? More people know it. Well, there's 25,000 people a day that attend Lourdes in France. It just boggles your mind. And so during the season, the warmer months, you get about 5 million people there. And the procession goes on, seems like forever. And it's wide and goes a long distance. And leading out in front of the procession are people that are being pushed along in their beds. They're laying prone. And behind them are many, many, many wheelchairs, and people are pushing them. And so people from all over the world attend it. Probably the only other pilgrimage site that's more visited is in Mecca. And that's another sacred spot to some people. So sacred means a lot of different things to a lot of people. And I honor that. But I also know this, that the last 2,000 years was the Piscean age, and where the symbol of the fish was used by the Christians, early Christian church, so they would recognize one another. And it's the Piscean is the age of belief. You would believe in your faith. You would believe in something greater than you are. It was the age of believing. Well, we've been into the Aquarian age for probably 10 or 15 years. And what's the difference? The Aquarian is the water bearer. The Aquarian, what does the water represent? Who has an answer for that? Would you give her the microphone, please?
Consciousness.
The flow of consciousness is a good answer. Anything else? It's that flow of consciousness, or the flow of our spirit. And what is the difference between being in the flow and believing? Now, one of my favorite old teachers was Emma Curtis Hopkins. And she said, being tied to a belief is like being tied to a stake. And if you think about that, just think how many beliefs you used to be tied to that you've surrendered because they no longer serve you. There's nothing wrong with beliefs, but it's good to have the awareness that we have beliefs and we can change them. So the age of the Aquarian age is the age of knowing, the age of realization, making real. What are we here to make real? Who's going to answer for that?
We're here to make each step we take sacred. We're here to make each step we take sacred. Taking that consciousness, that flow of consciousness, that belief, and putting it into action.
Thank you, Gene. That's a good metaphor. Every step we take, we want to have the consciousness that it's sacred. And that's a metaphor. So it's every breath we breathe is another metaphor for that sacredness.
I don't know if this really applies, but I picked up a little coaster, and it says, and it actually says that we don't just believe that God can, but we know that he will. And so it's the knowing in us that brings it forth from us, not just believing.
So being in the know. Anyone else? Being in the know. So what does it mean to be in the know? Each of us, what does it mean to be in the know? For me, it means, what do I realize? What have I made real in my life? I see my granddaughter out here, Tamsin, and she has made real in her life yoga. She dreamt it, she lived it, she realized it, she became it. When I was involved as a healing practitioner, I realized long before I had a license, that's what I was. Before I became a minister, I wasn't interested in becoming well, that's not true. When I was young, I was interested in becoming a priest until I found out I had to be celibate. That kind of ruined that for me. But in becoming a minister, when I went back to school and became a fellow of religious science, I hungered for that philosophy, but it was easy for me to absorb because I could realize it. I could understand that all paths ultimately lead to the same awareness. And what is that same awareness? Got an answer for that? What's this?
God is all there is.
God is all there is. And so we make it awfully complex sometime. I just saw it in New York this week, Fiddler on the Roof, and I love it. And I love the way the lead character talks to God. Yen and yen and yen and yen. God, I want to be a wealthy man. You know, that type of thing. And we all talk to. Is there anyone that doesn't talk to God? We all talk to God. How do you get answers? And what are your answers like? Patrick?
You know the answer. You know the answer. You already know the answer.
So the answer's in the question.
You already know the answer.
Okay, that's true. The answer is usually always in the question. So the answer you're asking, you already know the answer. There's something in you that knows the answer. Do you want to say something? Anyone else? No? So anyway, we tend to make this stuff difficult, and it really isn't. It's really simple. And so as we move into the sacrament, I'll give you a little background of that first. I read a book called Blessed Among Women. And it turns out it was written by a fellow of religious science who got his doctorate in that field for writing 2 books. This was the first one. When I read this book, it inspired me more than any other book I've ever read in my life. And so, is it sacred? When something inspires you, is that sacred? And is it more sacred than something else? No, no, no. But it turns that spiritual flame upward within ourselves. That intuitive awareness becomes stronger. And so that's speaking louder to us. This book spoke very loud to me. So I wanted to find the author of this book. And my wife was speaking in Ojai, and I joined her, and I went to a Bart's bookstore. It's a huge used bookstore. And I asked the proprietor, I said, can I buy some more of these books? I want to share them with my friends. He said, yeah, and there's another one, Brothers of the Grape. He wrote that, and it's right over there, and he lives here in Ojai. I said, whoa. So I picked up a phone. I called him, and he wasn't feeling well. So we set up another time. And when I met him, we just really kind of clicked. And eventually, when I gave up a conventional church, I still liked the idea of being a minister. And Arnold was ordaining people like me that have the interest, background, and the realization that you're already a minister. And he ordained me, and he used was essentially what this is, the Sacrament of Empowerment. So he taught me the Sacrament of Empowerment. And that was probably in the mid-80s, 1980s. And since then, I've used it a number of places around the world, and we've probably, I don't know, maybe 500 to 1,000 people have experienced this New Age sacrament over a period of like 25 years. So I'm going to introduce it to you in a moment. Daryl, would you put the slide up there that shows the 7 sacraments as found in the Catholic teaching? The you're probably all familiar with them. You know, we've got Patrick, baptism, confirmation,
Boy, it's been a long time. Baptism, confirmation, Holy Communion, holy orders, last rites. Am I there? I think I got them all. Marriage, yeah.
Wedding.
Sacrament of marriage, yeah.
wedding.
Sacrament of marriage, yes.
Yeah. And what do these sacraments have in common? Thank you. Yes, there need to be somebody holy to administer them
Not
to
exactly true.
another person.
I baptized dead and dying Viet Cong and North Vietnamese soldiers that I'd helped kill in Vietnam, and I baptized them. Even though I knew they were Buddhists, I said, what the hell? I baptized them. Anybody can baptize.
Anybody can do
Anybody
it.
can baptize. Yeah, it's not, it's just
Okay.
the words.
So you don't have to be clergy. No. How about Holy Communion? How about confirmation? How about weddings? So anyway, it's historically we've had priests and priestesses perform sacramental rites almost in all major religions. It's nothing new. You've turned to something outside of yourself that is holier and you look up to and can administer these rites. And they also represent stages of development, phases in our life. You know, from you baptized, you're young, then you receive Holy Communion, which means you learn the idea that you're unity, that you're one with God. Or then you go into a confirmation when you're a little older and you feel like now you're being acknowledged because you're going from being like an adolescent to an adult, this type of thing. Or then you get married, which is another stage in your life. Or when you pass on, or when you get sick. So these are all stages that are transitional stages in our lives that have become important to humanity and that we honor them, whether we call them sacraments or not. Would you show the second slide? The second slide represents the 7 chakras. And they're not unlike the 7 sacraments. You probably never thought of it that way, but I'm going to give you an opportunity to look at it that way. There's 7 chakras. Are you all familiar with chakras? Good. Would you show the next slide, Daryl? This shows you how you can relate them to one another. I've got a handout for you so you can look at it closely. Thank you, Judy. It's pretty, if you can't read the wording up there, you can read it on the handout. You can see there's 3 columns. One's the 7 sacraments, And then there's the 7 chakras. And then you can look at it in terms of healing treatment, or you can call that science of mind treatment. And so you can say that essential divinity is a realization of our spirituality as a chakra. And then as a treatment, you get into desire and will, which I will explain that a little more later. And then the second one, the sacrament of reconciliation, it's a communication. It's being able to communicate, get rid of the baggage, and get clear on your essential divinity and who you are. Get rid of the guilt trips or whatever baggage we're carrying on ourselves that makes us feel disconnected from our essential self. And then, excuse me, that would be the unification step in the healing process. And then holy orders. What are holy orders? In the chakra system, that would be awareness. What are we aware of? In holy orders, we're aware of our unity. And in the treatment, it's very important to use our imaginations, and we'll come back to that later. And then baptism. It represents a basic trust, which is a chakra, or faith, as it would be in the administration of science of mind treatment. Matrimony represents the chakra that deals with sexuality, and that translates into creativity. When I was in the sales field, I was first learning about all this stuff. I was in a sales meeting, and I brought up the subject in a sales group about the same energy that's used in our chakra, that's used for sexuality, is used to stimulate creativity. They all almost laughed me out of the room. But it's so powerful, it's easy to overlook. And then the sacrament of communion is that heart chakra of love and healing. And that's when we get to the realization step in spiritual mind treatment. And then the confirmation sacrament is the same as the chakra for wisdom and power. And essentially, we would use that as gratitude in a form of a spiritual mind treatment, as a form of scientific prayer. Now let's get back to number 1, essential divinity, spirituality, desire, and will. Okay. Desire, meaning in French, D of sire of God the Father. So God the Father, that's the will of God. And that's expressing itself through every one of us, through our will and through our desires. And that desire, in order to come into fruition, is implanted in the divine feminine, in the soil. It's like putting a seed. The seed is the thought of God. It's the will of God. And that seed goes into the soil, the divine feminine, which nurtures the seed and brings it into fruition. It's such a natural process and so easy to not understand or overlook. But that's how it works. The desire that we all have goes into the fertile soil of our imagination and makes it real. That's how simple it is. And so when you've heard people say, well, you have no imagination, or that's in your imagination. So they don't understand, or they're dismissing the full potential and realization of imagination. So what we're going to do in this process is we're going to combine the ancient practice of using grape juice and homemade wafers made out of love. And each of us is going to get one of these, and we're going to take a moment and go into meditation and come into a realization of a desire that you haven't fulfilled. It's a latent desire, something that's important to your soul to fulfill in this lifetime. So if you'd like to do that, I'm pass these out to you right now, and each you can take one if you wish to participate. And I'll kind of talk you through it. Patrick, would you like to pass them out? I'll keep one up here. See, the temple of God is within each and every one of us. You don't have to go to a Center for Spiritual Living. You don't have to go to a church or a temple. It is right within each and every one of us. And to the extent that we really get that, then we are able to express our essential divinity. And the clearer we are on our essential divinity, the clearer we are in our intentions, and the clearer we are in our desires. And then when we get into that imagination where we can see that desire is already complete, it's already fulfilled, so that's a very powerful step. So it's just this simple. Just close your eyes and hold this wafer. And however you get quiet and tune in and let go of the outside distractions, and just ask yourself, if you're not sure, what is it in my life that's unfulfilled, that's very important to me, that I'd like to make real? So I'm going to give you a moment to do that. And when you've come into that realization, when you can see whatever that is for you, when you can imagine it, not as a progression, but as a fulfillment. If I saw myself, I realized myself as a minister before I became licensed and fully schooled, I would see that. I would imagine it. I would know it. I would feel it. I would honor it. So that's what you do with your imagination. And I'll be silent here for a moment. As each one has come into this realization of that which is important for their soul to bring forth, I'd like you to come forward, each one of you, and stand around the table. And then we'll perform the next step of the journey. So as you've come into the realization and you've put those vibrations into that piece of bread, then please come up here to this table and partake of the rest of the sacrament of empowerment. I honor the presence of God in each and every person here. And I realize the temple of God is within each and every one of us. And that makes us all ministers. We're ministers of love, we're ministers of light and power. And that being the case, I'd like you to raise your hands over this cup. And know with me that the power of love, light, and energy of the divine is expressing itself through each and every one of us. This blessing of love, light, and power is going into this grape juice. And this grape juice will be empowered to help us fulfill the realization of what's important for each and every one of us. So in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the living Spirit Almighty, we honor the presence of God in all, through all, as all, and may this grape juice and this wonderfully made bread serve us well in this sacrament. Amen. Now, what you do is you take your bread, you dip it into the grape juice, and then consume it. So you're consuming your realization, you're making it real, and then go back to your chair for a moment. So, here, make sure you don't spill it on you. So each of us now has realized our potentiality in bringing what God wants through us as us. We've consumed it, we've become it, we are it. And so it is. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the living Spirit, we are all one. Amen. Thank you for joining me today in this celebration of the New Age Sacrament of Empowerment.
Thank you so much, Charlie. Yes, it is empowering. I didn't have any clue what it was going to be like. This is fabulous. I love the ceremony. I love the sacredness of it all. Let's give him another hand. Thank you. Be sure to look at the books he has. And he said you're going to order them online. Oh, wow. Kind of don't want to come out of that feeling, you know? It's time for our offering. Gina's going to put our affirmation up on the screen. And Harry, you want to do that for me? Thank you. And as we take our gift in our hand, we fill it with that love and that light and that awareness of the awakening, knowing that there is only one. And we're so grateful for the opportunity to be here now for this sacred evening and for this knowing within each one. So please say with me, my offering is my acceptance of God as the source of my supply, and it symbolizes my faith in the abundant flow of this supply. Thank you. Okay. Next week is going to be part 1 of a 2-part series from Reverend Patty Mercado and Reverend Karen Allen. And the topic is, what would Ernest say? Ernest Holmes, of course. So it's part 1 this week, next week. And then the following, that's on June 1st. Also, that is our potluck night. So please come at 5:45, bring your favorite dish and join us for a potluck. And then this wonderful What Would Ernest Say with Reverend Patty and Reverend Karen. The following week after that, on the 8th, we're dark. We are not having a Wednesday service because the choir is practicing for their wonderful show on the 10th. The following week after that will be part 2, Reverend Patty and Reverend Karen, What Would Ernest Say, part 2. So be sure to join us for that. So now I'd like us to get up and have a circle. Let's circle this beautiful table, this sacred table of empowerment, and we're going to sing Holy, Holy.